Chapter 1. The last thing I remember from my first life is the warmth of his hands. Everything else from that night is fragmented. The battle, the smoke, the sound of steel on stone and men shouting things I could not make out over the noise of everything falling apart. I had been running. I do not remember why I was there or where I was trying to go. I only remember that the ground was wet and the sky was the color of something burning, and then I fell and I could not get back up. He found me, I do not know how. The battlefield was enormous and the dark was thick, and I do not know why he stopped for one person when there were 100 things more urgent demanding his attention. But he stopped. He crouched beside me in the wet and the dark, and he put his hands on my face, and he looked at me with those brown eyes, and I remember thinking that I had never seen anyone look at another person the way he was looking at me. Like I was something that mattered, like losing me would cost him something he could not afford to lose. I did not know him, I was certain of that. He was a soldier, a commander by the look of his insignia, fair skin and red hair that was dark with rain and brown eyes that were doing something I could not quite name, not grief exactly, something older than grief, something that looked like the specific anguish of someone watching a thing happen that they have been dreading for a long time. He said something, I could not hear it. The noise was too much and I was already too far away. I saw his mouth move and I watched his face and I tried to hold on long enough to understand, but I could not. His hands were warm. That is the last thing I remember. His hands on my face in the cold and the dark, and the warmth of them, and the specific feeling of being held by someone who did not want to let go. And then nothing. And then light. Not the dramatic kind, not golden gates or vast white spaces. Just light the way light is when you open your eyes in the morning in a room that has curtains that do not fully close. Ordinary light. The kind that means you are somewhere and it is daytime, and the world has continued without you for a while and is now including you again. I opened my eyes and I was in a bed, a very good bed, the kind of bed that exists in houses where money is not a concern. Heavy curtains, carved wooden posts, a ceiling with plasterwork I could not quite focus on yet. A woman was sitting in a chair beside the bed. She had tan skin and blonde hair pinned neatly, and she was reading something, and she looked up when I moved, and her face did something I had never seen a stranger's face do when they looked at me. She looked like someone seeing something they had been praying for. She said a name, not mine. The name she said was Lena. She said it the way you say the name of someone you love who has been ill and has finally opened their eyes. I understood 3 things very quickly. The first was that I was not dead, or I was not dead anymore. The second was that I was someone else. I was in a body that was not my body, and in a room that was not my room, and the woman looking at me with that expression was someone who loved the person whose body I was now occupying in a way that had nothing to do with me. The third was that I remembered everything from before, every moment of the life I had just left, the battle, the dark, the rain, his hands on my face. I lay in the very good bed, and I looked at the ceiling, and I understood that I had died and been born again, and that I was going to have to figure out what to do about that. I was 18 years old, again. I had a great deal of work to do. Chapter 2. My name in this life is Lena. I have tan skin and blonde hair and amber eyes, and I am the only daughter of Lord Aldric of the Western Reaches, which is a title that sounds impressive and is, in fact, very impressive. My father controls more land than most men dream of. His armies are large. His treasury is full. His name makes certain people very quiet in certain rooms. He is also, I learn within the first week of my new life, the man who started the war. The war that I died in, the battle in the rain, the burning sky, the ground that was wet with things I try not to think about now that I know what they were. My father started it over a trade dispute that stopped being about trade approximately 3 years ago and became about something much older and much uglier. Territory, pride, the specific kind of hatred that grows between powerful men when they have been competing for the same thing for long enough that they have forgotten what the thing was. I learn all of this carefully. I ask questions in the way a girl who has been ill and recovering asks questions, curious and gentle and giving nothing away. My mother is warm and easy to talk to, and she tells me things without realizing she is telling me things. The staff talk around me, the way staff talk around someone they consider a fixture of the house. I listen to everything. What I am building, slowly and carefully, is an understanding of who I am now and what world I have woken up in. The war is ongoing. It has been going on for 4 years. Both sides have lost things they will not get back. The border between my father's lands and the kingdom to the east is a line of scorched earth and resentment, and men who are tired in the specific way that men get tired when they have been fighting long enough to forget what peace felt like. The kingdom to the east is ruled by a king whose name I hear spoken with a particular kind of controlled contempt in my father's house, a king whose commander I have heard mentioned several times in the dispatches that cross my father's desk, a commander whose name I hear and feel something strange and specific happen in my chest every time. Cain, his name is Cain. I have been in this life for 3 weeks before I understand why that name does something to me, before I connect the name to the face in the rain, and the hands on my face, and the mouth moving to say something I could not hear. When I understand it, I sit very still in the garden for a very long time. The man who held me while I died is my father's greatest enemy. And I am now my father's daughter. I sit in the garden and think about that for a long time, about what it means, about what I am supposed to do with the memory of his hands and the warmth of them, and the expression on his face that I have never stopped seeing when I close my eyes. I do not have an answer, not yet, but I am 23 years old in the memories I carry, and I have learned that not having an answer yet is not the same as not having an answer. I will figure it out. I always figure things out. I just need time. Chapter 3. The peace talks are my father's idea, which surprises everyone including me. He is not a man who gives ground easily. He is not a man who gives anything easily. But even he has looked at 4 years of war and understood that the math is not working in his favor anymore. Both sides are exhausted. Both sides have run the numbers and found that continuing to fight will cost more than whatever victory was supposed to be worth. So there are to be talks, neutral ground, a trading city 3 days from both borders, built on a river that runs between the two territories and belongs to neither. Both parties will bring representatives. Both parties will sit across a table and attempt to find a version of peace that they can each accept without losing too much face. My father decides to bring me. I do not know why exactly. Perhaps because I am his only daughter and daughters are useful at negotiations in ways that have nothing to do with negotiating. Perhaps because my mother suggested it and she has more influence over him than he would ever admit. Perhaps because he looked at me recovering in that bed after weeks of illness and decided he wanted me near him. I do not ask. I simply pack my things and go. The trading city is called Verk. It sits on the river like it has always been there and always intends to stay. Old stone buildings and bridges, and the particular atmosphere of a place that has made its living from the fact of being between two things, neither one side nor the other. Practical and prosperous, and very good at pretending not to notice the tension of the people who pass through it. We arrive in the afternoon of the second day. My father's party takes up residence in a large townhouse near the river. There are guards and staff, and the various advisors and aides who attend every significant gathering. There is food and wine, and the carefully managed social performance of people who are preparing for a very important and very delicate thing. I do not sleep that night. I lie in the bed in the townhouse and I stare at the ceiling and I think about what tomorrow means. I have not seen him since I died. I have not seen him in this life at all. I have only the memory of a face in the rain and hands on my face and a name that does something to me when I hear it. Tomorrow I will be in the same room as him. Tomorrow I will have to look at the man who held me while I died and pretend I do not know him. I do not know if I can do that. I have been pretending for months now. I have been performing the life of a girl who does not remember dying. I have gotten very good at it, but this is different. This is him, and pretending I do not know him feels like the hardest thing I have ever been asked to do. I get up before dawn and I sit by the window and I watch the river in the dark and I remind myself of everything I know about this situation. I am my father's daughter. He is my father's enemy. Whatever I feel when I look at him, I cannot show it. Not here. Not yet. Not until I understand what is happening and what it means and what I am supposed to do about it. The talks begin at midday. I am seated at the far end of the table, away from the central negotiations, in the position of someone who is present but not central, observed but not consulted. I keep my expression neutral and my hands still in my lap, and I watch the door. He comes in with the Eastern delegation, 4 advisors, 2 guards, and him. He is taller than I remembered, or perhaps I remembered him crouching and the standing version of him is a revision. He has the same red hair, a little longer now than in the rain, the same fair skin, the same brown eyes that move through the room with the specific attention of someone who has learned to read every space he enters before he trusts it. His eyes find me before they find anything else. I do not know how. I am at the far end of the table and there are 15 other people in the room, and I am not doing anything to draw attention. but his eyes come to me first, and they stop there, and something happens in his face that is very fast and very controlled, and does not last more than a second. But I see it, I was watching for it. He looks away, he takes his seat, the talks begin. I sit at the far end of the table, and I breathe very carefully, and I think about warm hands in the dark, and an expression I have been seeing in my sleep for months, and I understand that this is going to be even harder than I thought. Because he felt it too, whatever it was when his eyes found me, he felt it too. And neither of us can say anything about it. Not here, not yet. Chapter 4. The talks are scheduled for 5 days. 5 days of careful negotiation and managed tension, and the very specific social performance of people who hate each other, attempting to find common ground for reasons of mutual necessity. I attend every session. I sit at my end of the table, and I listen and I learn more about the war and what it has cost, and what both sides need from the peace than I have learned in all my months of careful listening in my father's house. Both sides are tired. Both sides have run out of things to be angry about that justify the cost of continuing. The actual negotiation is less dramatic than the position of both parties suggested. Both sides want the same thing. Both sides are too proud to say so directly. The diplomats on both sides are doing the careful work of letting both sides have it without either side having to ask for it. It is fascinating and also very slow. On the second afternoon, there is a recess. 2 hours in the garden of the townhouse where the talks are being held, while the various advisors retreat to their respective corners and argue about wording and precedent and the specific legal implications of certain phrasing. I go to the garden because I need air, and because sitting in a room watching people manage each other is exhausting, even when you find it interesting. He is already there. Standing near the far wall where a climbing plant has been allowed to do whatever it wanted for several years and has taken full advantage. His hands are in his pockets, and he is looking at the plant with the expression of someone who has come outside to think and has fixed his eyes on the nearest thing without actually seeing it. I could leave. The garden is not large, but there are other parts of it. I could find a bench on the opposite side and pretend I have not seen him and spend the 2 hours thinking about something else. I do not leave. I walk to the other side of the climbing plant, and I look at it, and I stand there, and I do not say anything, and neither does he, and we stand on opposite sides of the plant, in silence for a moment that stretches in a way that silence stretches when both people in it are very aware of each other. Then he says something. He says it quietly, not looking at me, eyes still on the plant. He says that the negotiators have been arguing about the wording of one specific clause for 6 hours, and he is starting to think the clause might be the point rather than the obstacle. It is an observation, not directed at me specifically, the kind of thing a person says when they are thinking out loud and happen to not be alone. I say that I think he is right, that the clause about river access is the real issue and everything else is architecture around it, that whoever controls the river controls the trade, and both sides know it, and neither side wants to be the first to say it directly. He looks at me then, not the quick glance from the table, a proper look. His brown eyes are very focused, and he is doing the thing his eyes always seem to do, the thing I noticed in the rain and in the negotiating room and now here, reading something in what he is looking at. I look back, I keep my face neutral. I am very good at neutral by now. He says that I am Lord Aldric's daughter, not a question, a statement of something he has confirmed. I say that I am. He says his name, Cain, commander of the Eastern forces, as if I do not know, as if his name has not been living in my chest for months doing something I do not have a word for. I say my name back, Lena, as if this is a normal introduction between two people who have never met. He nods, he looks back at the plant. We stand there for a few more minutes in the particular silence of two people who have more to say than the situation allows. Then the bell rings to call everyone back inside, and we both turn and go back in through separate doors. That night I sit in my room in the townhouse, and I press my hands flat on the windowsill, and I breathe, and I think about standing on opposite sides of a climbing plant, talking about river access and trade clauses, and whether his voice sounds like I remember it or like something new that is also the same. It sounds like both. It sounds like something I have always known. I am in serious trouble. Chapter 5. On the third day of the talks, I start paying attention to him differently. Not the way I have been paying attention, which is the careful peripheral attention of someone trying not to be caught looking, The kind of attention where you absorb information from the corners of your vision and file it away without reacting to it. I have been doing that since the first session. It is exhausting and also unavoidable. On the third day, I start watching his face when he does not know I am watching it. There is a moment in the afternoon session when my father says something sharp and pointed in the way my father sometimes speaks in negotiations, reminding everyone of the power he holds without saying the power directly. A comment about the Eastern Kingdom's resources and what 4 years of war has done to them. It is not technically an insult, it is a reminder. I watch Cain's face when my father says it. He does not react. He is very good at not reacting, but his jaw does something very slight and his hands, which are folded on the table in front of him, go still in a specific way that means he is managing himself rather than simply being still. And then, a fraction of a second later, his eyes come to me. Not to check my reaction, not in the way you glance at someone when a mutual social situation becomes awkward, something more specific than that, something that looks like checking on me, the way you look at someone when something unpleasant has happened and you want to know how they are taking it. As if my father's sharpness was directed at me rather than at the Eastern delegation. As if he is used to checking on me when my father is difficult. He catches himself, he looks away, the moment passes, the talks continue. But I sit with that for the rest of the session, and into the evening, and through dinner with my father, who is in the particular mood that comes after a successful piece of negotiating theater. There are two possibilities. The first is that he is simply a perceptive man who noticed I was at a table where my father was being pointed and looked to see how I was managing it. That is a reasonable thing for a perceptive person to do. The second possibility is something I am not ready to think about directly yet. I approach it sideways. I look at it from the corner of what I am willing to consider. The second possibility is that he remembers something too. Not the way I remember. I have everything, every moment clear and present and entirely mine. What I died with is what I woke up with, and I have been living alongside these memories for 8 months now. But there are people who carry things from one life to the next without knowing they are carrying them. Not memories, something more like instinct, like knowing without knowing why you know, like a feeling of recognition for something you have never consciously encountered. I think about his eyes finding me first in a room of 15 people. I think about him standing in the garden talking about river access to a stranger as if we were continuing a conversation rather than beginning one. I think about the specific way he looked at me when my father was being difficult and the instinct behind that look. He does not remember, not the way I do. But he feels something, I am almost certain of it, something that does not have a name yet because he has not been given the context that would let him name it. I think about what it would mean to give him that context, to tell him, to say I know you, I knew you before, I died in your arms in the rain and I woke up here, and I have been carrying the memory of your hands on my face for 8 months. I think about what that would sound like, I think about what he would do with it. I do not know yet, but I am starting to think that the question of whether to tell him is less a question of if and more a question of when. Chapter 6. On the fourth evening the talks end early. One of my father's advisors is unwell, and the session is cut short at 3 hours rather than the scheduled 5. The official party retreats to their respective townhouses. Dinner is informal. The schedule tomorrow will be adjusted. I go out. Not with permission exactly. I tell my mother I am going to walk along the river because the city is beautiful and I have barely seen it, and she is warm and distracted, and says to take a guard, which I do, one of the younger ones who is not particularly interested in following me closely, and I walk along the river in the early evening light, and I think. Verk is beautiful in the evening. The river catches the last of the sun and holds it. The old bridges cast long shadows. The city is doing the things cities do at the end of the day, settling into its evening self, different from the daytime version, quieter, more honest. He is on the bridge. The middle bridge, the oldest one. I see him before he sees me, and I have time to make a decision. I decide the same thing I decided in the garden. I do not turn away. I walk onto the bridge. I stop beside him at the railing. We look at the river together in the evening light, and neither of us says anything for a moment that is longer than it should be for two strangers who happen to occupy the same bridge. He says that the city is better in the evening. I say that most places are. He says that is either very true or very pessimistic, and he is not sure which. I say that it does not have to be one or the other, and he looks at me the way he has been looking at me since the first session and says that he thinks I am right. We talk not about the negotiations, not about the war or the river access clause or our respective fathers and their respective grievances. We talk about the city and about the river, and about what it means to be in a place that belongs to neither side and therefore belongs to everyone. We talk about what peace actually looks like on the ground when the treaties are signed, what it means for the people who have been living on the border for 4 years, what it costs to build something after you have spent years tearing things down. He is thoughtful and precise and occasionally quietly sardonic in a way that makes me want to laugh, and I do laugh once, at something he says about the specific absurdity of two grown men spending 6 hours arguing about the wording of a clause that both of them understand perfectly well, and he looks at me when I laugh with an expression that makes me look away at the river. We stay on the bridge until the light is mostly gone. The guard who is supposed to be following me is somewhere behind us and is pretending very effectively not to be paying attention. Before we separate, he says something that stays with me. He says that he has been trying to understand a feeling he has had since the first session, a feeling he does not have a good word for. The closest he can get is recognition. He says he knows that is strange given that we have never met, and he says it with the slight self-consciousness of someone admitting something they are not entirely sure they should be admitting. I look at him, brown eyes in the last of the evening light, red hair that is darker now that the sun is gone, the face I have been seeing when I close my eyes for 8 months. I say that I understand the feeling. I say it carefully, giving him just enough to know he is not alone in it without giving him everything yet. He looks at me for a long moment. Then he nods once, and we say goodnight, and I walk back along the river with my guard, and I go to my room and I sit on the edge of the bed, and I think about the word recognition and the way he said it, and the way I said I understand the feeling, and what the space between those two things contains. It contains everything. It contains 8 months of carrying something alone. It contains the warmth of his hands in the dark, and the expression on his face that I have never stopped seeing, and the feeling of being the only person in a room who knows the whole story. I am going to tell him. I decided on the edge of the bed in the dark, not tonight, not here in Verk where we are surrounded by people who have stakes in what we do and say, but I am going to tell him. He deserves to know, whatever it costs. Chapter 7. The peace agreement is signed on the 5th day. It takes 4 hours in the morning, and the ceremony is formal and careful, and everyone in the room is performing the specific version of themselves that the occasion requires. My father signs with the particular expression of a man who has gotten approximately what he wanted and is allowing himself to look slightly magnanimous about it. The Eastern advisors sign with the expressions of men who have gotten approximately what they needed and are not looking at each other because the specific calculations of who got more are still being made. Cain signs last for his side. He is not the ranking diplomat, and by protocol he should not be the one to sign, but something has been arranged because he is there and he signs, and he does it without ceremony, quickly and precisely, and then he caps the pen and sets it down and looks up. He looks at me. Across the room, across the table where the treaty is laid out, across all the people and the protocol and the weight of 4 years of war that is now officially over. He looks at me the way he has been looking at me for 5 days, with that thing in his face that he does not have a word for yet, that recognition. I look back. And then the room is full of movement and congratulations, and the organized relief of people who have been holding their breath for a long time and are now allowed to breathe, and the moment passes. Both parties will leave Verk tomorrow. My father's party north and west, the Eastern delegation east. The treaty is signed. The talks are over. There is no official reason for us to be in the same city anymore. I have 1 afternoon. I spend the lunch hour thinking about what I am going to do with it. I think about every reason not to tell him. The war is just over. Both sides are raw. He is my father's enemy in title, even if the treaty has changed what that means in practice. Whatever happens between us happens between the daughter of Lord Aldric and the commander of the Eastern forces, and neither of those things is simple. I think about all of that, and then I think about sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark and deciding he deserves to know. And then I think about his hands in the rain and the expression on his face and 8 months of carrying this alone. I go to the garden. He is there. He looks at me when I come in, and something in his face says that he is not entirely surprised. We sit on the bench near the climbing plant. The afternoon light is good. The city around us is doing the particular things a city does when something significant has just concluded, and everyone is processing what that means. I look at my hands for a moment, then I look at him. And I tell him everything from the beginning, the battle and the dark and the rain and falling and not being able to get back up. I tell him about his hands and his face and the thing I saw in his expression that I have never stopped seeing. I tell him about the light and the bed and the woman who looked at me like I was something she had been praying for. I tell him about being Lena and learning who my father was and what my father had done and the specific and terrible understanding that the man whose hands I remembered was my father's greatest enemy. I tell him about 8 months of carrying this, about hearing his name in my father's house and feeling something happen in my chest, about seeing him walk into the negotiating room and the effort it took to keep my face still, about the garden and the bridge and all the things I almost said and did not say. He listens to all of it. He does not interrupt. He sits very still the way people sit when they are receiving something enormous and are trying to hold it carefully enough not to drop any of it. When I finish, it is quiet for a long time. Then he says something that breaks something open in my chest that I have been keeping very carefully closed for 8 months. He says that he has dreamed about a battlefield for 4 years, a specific dream that he has had so many times he has stopped being surprised by it, a battlefield in the rain and someone he could not reach in time and hands that were too late. He says he has never known who the person in the dream was. He has never been able to see a face. He has only ever known the feeling of being too late and the specific grief of that. He says that when he walked into the negotiating room and saw me at the end of the table, the dream stopped making sense and started making a different kind of sense entirely. He says he did not know what to do with that. I look at him, brown eyes that are doing something they have not done in any of the 5 days I have been watching them, something unguarded, something that has the quality of a person finally understanding something they have been dreaming about for 4 years. I reach across the bench and I take his hand. His hand is warm, exactly as warm as I remembered, exactly as warm as it was in the rain and the dark in the life before this one. He holds my hand and does not let go. We sit in the garden in the afternoon light and neither of us speaks for a long time. There is nothing to say yet that is equal to what has just been said. We will need time and distance and the careful work of figuring out what comes next. The treaty is signed, but we are still what we are. I am still my father's daughter. He is still who he is. None of that has resolved itself just because two people sat on a bench and told each other the truth. But he knows now. And I am not carrying it alone anymore. That is enough for today. Chapter 8. We leave Werk the next morning, going in opposite directions. The goodbye is brief and formal, and surrounded by people who are watching us with the mild, interested attention that anyone attracts when they are saying goodbye to someone from the other side of a recently concluded war. My father is nearby. His advisors are nearby. Everything we say is for an audience whether we want it to be or not. He finds a moment, a specific moment when the people around us have shifted and there is a gap of 2 seconds where we are not directly observed. He says something quiet that only I can hear. He says that he will write. He says it simply, not as a question, as a statement of something he has already decided. I say all right. And then the moment closes and we are back in the formal version of the goodbye, and then the carriages are moving, and Werk is behind us, and the road north is ahead. The first letter arrives 3 weeks after I am home. It is brought by a courier with no identifying markings, addressed to me in handwriting I do not know yet, and will know very well by the end of the year. It is careful and it is formal, and it is ostensibly about the treaty implementation, which gives us a subject that is legitimate and defensible, and also not what the letter is really about. I write back, my letter is also careful and also formal and also ostensibly about treaty implementation. The third letter is less formal, the fifth is less formal still. By the 10th, we have stopped pretending the letters are about anything other than what they are about. He writes the way he speaks, thoughtful and precise and occasionally dry in a way that makes me laugh in my room with the letter in my hands. He asks me questions about my life that are genuine questions, the kind that assume the answers matter, and he listens to the answers I give him in writing with the same completeness that he listened to everything on that bench in Werk. I tell him things I have not told anyone in this life, about the dreams I had before Werk, about the specific weight of carrying memories that nobody around me could see or share. About what it was like to wake up and be someone else and have to build an understanding of an entirely new life while carrying the full weight of the previous one. About all the moments in my father's house when I heard something about the war and felt the particular grief of someone who has been on both sides of it in ways nobody knows. He tells me things too, about the 4 years of war and what they cost him personally, beyond the political and strategic costs, about the dream and what it had been like to have it so many times that it became a kind of company rather than a haunting, about walking into a negotiating room and seeing someone at the end of a table and feeling a recognition he did not have a word for. We write to each other for 6 months. The letters get longer. The formality disappears entirely. What replaces it is something I do not have a word for in this life, but that feels like something I have always known how to do. I am falling in love with him again, or for the first time. I am not sure there is a difference. Chapter 9. My father finds out about the letters in the 7th month. I do not know how. I was careful. The courier was discreet, but my father has been running a large and complicated territory for 30 years, and he did not do it by missing things. He calls me into his study one morning, and he has one of the letters on the desk in front of him, and he looks at me with the expression of a man who is very angry and is choosing not to show all of it. He does not ask me to explain myself. He tells me that this will stop. He says it in the tone of someone who is not presenting a request or a suggestion but a fact about the future. He says the treaty is a political instrument, and it does not require personal correspondence with the Eastern commander, and it is not appropriate, and it will stop. I look at the letter on his desk. I look at my father. I think about everything I know about him from 8 months of being his daughter in this life, and from months of letters from a man who fought against him for 4 years and understood him from the other side. My father is not a cruel man. He is a powerful one, which is a different thing. He loves me in the way that people love things they consider their own, fiercely and with complete confidence that what is good for him is also what is good for the thing he loves. He is not entirely wrong about that, but he is not entirely right either. I tell him that I understand his concern. He looks at me. I have been a careful and obedient presence in his house for 8 months, and this is the first time I have said something that is technically agreeable and actually a refusal. I tell him that I respect his position, and I understand the politics, and I know that the treaty is delicate, and that anything that complicates it reflects on him and on the family. I tell him all of that because it is all true. Then I tell him that I am not going to stop writing. The silence in the study after I say that is very thorough. My father looks at me with an expression I have not seen on him before, the expression of a man revising his understanding of someone he thought he knew completely. I do not flinch. I sit in the chair across from his desk, and I look at him steadily, and I do not flinch. I have died once already. I have woken up in a strange life and built a version of myself inside it from nothing. I have carried a secret for 8 months and told it to the only person it belonged to. I am not afraid of my father's silence. He does not agree, but he does not forbid it again either. He tells me this conversation is not finished, and I tell him I understand, and I leave the study and I go to my room and I write a letter. I tell Cain about the study. I tell him about my father's expression and about saying I am not going to stop. I tell him that I do not know what comes next with my father and that I am not going to pretend I do. His reply takes 8 days because of the distance, and when it arrives it is longer than any previous letter. He tells me things about his own father and his own choices, and the specific experience of doing something you know is right in the face of someone powerful who has decided it is wrong. He tells me that he is sorry I have to navigate this, and that he is not sorry about the thing that is making it necessary. He tells me that he would very much like to see me again. He tells me that he is trying to find a reason to be in the North that is legitimate and politically defensible, and that he has not found one yet, but that he is working on it. I read that letter twice, then I write back and tell him that I am working on it from my end too. Chapter 10. It takes 4 more months. 4 more months of letters, and one extremely careful conversation between my father and me in which I say things I have been preparing for weeks, and he listens in a way he does not usually listen, and at the end of it he is not happy, but he is quiet in the specific way that means he is thinking rather than deciding. What I tell him is this: the treaty needs tending. Every treaty does. It is easy to sign an agreement and harder to build the actual peace that the agreement is supposed to create. The border territories need management. The trade relationships need establishing. The practical reality of 2 sides that have been at war needing to learn to function next to each other requires sustained attention and specific effort. I tell him that I have been corresponding with the Eastern commander about exactly this, that the letters are substantive and focused on treaty implementation, and that the relationship is a useful one for the family and for the territory. All of this is true. The letters have been about treaty implementation among other things. The relationship is useful. I am simply not telling him everything the relationship is. My father is not a stupid man. He hears what I am saying and he hears what I am not saying. He sits behind his desk and he looks at me and he thinks about power and politics and the specific calculations of a man who has been managing large things for 30 years. He agrees to a formal meeting, a delegation, treaty implementation, border management, all of it legitimate and appropriate and documented and witnessed. I write to Cain that night. The letter is 3 pages long, and most of it is trying to be professional about something I am not professional about at all. He arrives in the north in late spring. His delegation is small and appropriate, and every person in it is exactly who they are supposed to be for the purpose of the official visit. He arrives at my father's estate in the afternoon, and my father receives him in the formal way, and there are introductions and the careful performance of 2 men who have signed a treaty together and are now navigating the reality of what comes after. I am in the great hall when he arrives. I am standing near the window, and I see the delegation come through the gate, and I see him dismount and look up at the house, and then his eyes find the window, and they find me in it, and something happens in his face that has nothing to do with the official visit, and everything to do with the letters and the bench in Werk and the warmth of his hands. I step back from the window. I compose myself. I am my father's daughter in my father's house, and there are people watching everything. I go down to the great hall. The introduction is formal. My father introduces us as if we have not met, which is technically true in this life, and also entirely not true in any way that matters. Cain takes my hand in greeting, and his hand is warm, and he holds it for exactly the correct amount of time, and says something appropriate, and his brown eyes are very careful and also not careful at all. The visit lasts 4 days. On 3 of those days, there are formal meetings and structured conversations, and the careful political work of 2 parties building the infrastructure of a peace. I attend as much as I can. I contribute where I am able. I am more useful than my father expected, because I have been reading and thinking about these issues for months, and because 8 months of letters with the person on the other side of the table have given me an understanding of that side that none of my father's advisors have. My father notices. He does not say anything about it, but he notices. On the 4th day, there is an afternoon that is less structured. The formal business is mostly done, and both delegations are in the particular relaxed state of people who have gotten through something difficult and are now in the slightly easier air of the other side of it. I find Cain in the library. He is looking at the shelves with the expression of someone who genuinely likes books and is trying not to spend too long looking at them when there are things to do. We sit in the library for 2 hours. No one disturbs us. No one is supposed to disturb us because I have arranged things so that no one will need to, and my father is occupied with his advisors, and the rest of the delegation is occupied with each other. We talk about everything we have been writing to each other for 10 months, not about the treaty, about the things under the treaty, about what it means to be the people we are in the situation we are in, about what comes next and how, and what we are each willing to do to get there. He tells me that he has been thinking about the North, about whether there is a reason a man with his particular responsibilities might need to be in the North more regularly, about what that would look like and whether it is possible. I tell him about my father and the conversation we had and what my father heard and what he did not hear. I tell him that my father is not going to make this easy and that I am not asking him to make it easy and that easy was never the point. He looks at me in the library in the afternoon light and he says that he has been dreaming about a battlefield in the rain for 4 years and that the dream has stopped since Werk and that he does not think that is a coincidence. I look at him, fair skin and red hair and brown eyes that are doing the unguarded thing they do when he has stopped managing himself. I take his hand. His hand is warm. It has always been warm. It was warm in the rain in the dark in the life before this one, and it is warm now in a library in the afternoon in this one. He holds my hand and looks at me, and I look back at him, and the library is very quiet. I died in his arms once. I woke up as his enemy's daughter. I spent 8 months carrying a secret alone, and then I told him and he told me about a dream, and I understood that some things carry across, not just in one direction, and that whatever this is, it belongs to both of us. I am not going to waste it. Neither is he. Epilogue. It is spring again, 1 year since Werk. Almost exactly 1 year since I sat on a bench in a garden and told a man that I died in his arms in another life and woke up as his enemy's daughter. My father has not made it easy. I did not expect him to. He is a man who measures everything by what it costs and what it returns, and he is still making those calculations about Cain and about what this means for the family and the territory. but he is also a man who pays attention to results, and the results of the past year have been unambiguous. The border territories are more stable than they have been in 5 years. The trade relationships that were theoretical in the treaty are becoming actual things with actual numbers that mean something to the people on both sides of the border. The peace is holding. The peace is, in fact, working. My father does not admit that the letters had anything to do with this. He does not admit that having a daughter who spent 10 months corresponding with the Eastern Commander gave his household an advantage in treaty implementation that no other advisor could have provided. He does not say any of that, but he has stopped trying to make it stop. That is, for my father, a significant concession. Cain has been in the North twice more since the spring visit, both times officially, both times with full delegations and proper documentation and every appropriate formality, both times with an afternoon in the library that belongs to us and no one else. I have been east once, to the border territories officially, with a small party from my father's household to observe the trade route development. I spent 3 days in a city I had never seen in this life and 2 evenings in a garden that felt like it had been waiting for me. We are building something, carefully and in the right order, and with the full weight of our respective situations pressing on every choice we make. It is not simple. It was never going to be simple. I died in a war my father started, and I woke up as his daughter, and the man I am building this with spent 4 years fighting against my family. None of that disappears because we want it to. But it is ours. Whatever it is ours. Built by both of us out of the specific materials we have, letters and library afternoons and careful conversations, and the hard work of figuring out what comes next when what comes next does not have a clear path. I am writing this at my desk in my room with the window open and the spring air coming in and a letter from him on the desk that arrived this morning. It is a long letter. It is a good one. It makes me laugh twice and think hard once and want to write back immediately, which I will do when I finish this. I think about the last thing I remember from my first life, the warmth of his hands, the expression on his face, the mouth moving to say something I could not hear. I know now what he was saying. I know because I asked him, carefully, over the course of several letters, each one bringing me a little closer to the specific words, and he told me. He was saying that he was sorry, that he had been too late, that he was sorry he had not gotten there sooner. I wrote back and told him that it did not matter because I came back. I wrote back and told him that some things carry across and that whatever is between us was always going to find a way and that he was not too late. He was exactly on time. He was exactly where I woke up looking for. His reply to that letter took 9 days, and when it arrived it was 2 pages long, and the handwriting was less precise than usual, and that told me more than the words. The spring air is coming through the window. The letter is on the desk. I have a great deal to write back. I pick up my pen. I am not carrying this alone anymore. I never have to again.